There you go. You are on notice. All right. So the first thing I want to do is just welcome everyone here. And like I said, I think people will be coming in throughout the meeting. I think many of you know me. I'm Heidi Alexander. I'm the director of the SJC, Massachusetts SJC Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing, previously at Massachusetts Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. And so the purpose of this group, which we have now been running since September on a sort of every other month basis, is an opportunity for our well-being leaders, advocates, folks who are in professional development and human resources, and also attorneys, legal educators, to come together and share our best practices, ideas, challenges, vision to improve the well-being of legal professionals in Massachusetts. So in the first few meetings, we worked to come up with some group goals, and the goals of the meeting are threefold. One is to create a repository of well-being resources. And so to do that, we have started to publish the collection of our guest speakers and the testimonials that we hear here on our website, so that people can go back and take a look and listen and look at any materials that they would like. And I'll put a link to that in the chat. And then the second is to expand connections among people in this network and to build a culture to facilitate the sharing of ideas. And so we have talked around a few times about a listserv, and I think that is still that's still hanging, and we're not sure whether we want to move forward with that or not. I know everyone gets probably way too many emails these days, so so we're putting a pin in that. But that's, just to say that, again, a purpose of this group is really to make those connections and find people who may be helpful to you, and you can be helpful to them in their own work. And then, and always we're looking for feedback on these meetings. So if you have any feedback, or you think we could be doing something different or better, or if you have an idea, or if you'd like to speak, please let us know. The way that we have been organizing these is we have been hearing what we were calling testimonials. And the testimonials were from different people, including we've had someone from the Middlesex DA's office. We've had someone from Suffolk Law. We've had someone at the Attorney General's office. We've had a number of people in the firms sort of sharing what they are doing and their well-being efforts to help us all, provide us all with additional ideas of what we might be able to implement in our own workplaces and also in legal education. So today we have two speakers, and before I get to them, I just want to thank and mention. At our last meeting, we had a clinical psychologist from LCL, Sean Healy, who talked about LCL and the services that LCL offers. And we also had Rose Chayetti, who is from the Samaritans, who spoke about suicide awareness and resources, which of course is particularly important at this time, and has been certainly a concern over the pandemic for sure. So, and if you're interested, again, I will put in the chat a link to our previous meetings, which also includes a recording of Rose and Sean's presentation. The other thing that, if you are interested, what we have done in the past is we have had people in the chat put their name, affiliation, and contact information in case it is helpful to someone. So if you would like to do that, please feel free to use the chat for that. And then the other recommendation that we have had is when you do speak, and we do hope this will be interactive, so we do hope to hear from you, is to just let us know who you are. If you can just introduce yourself before you speak, I think that is very helpful. And then again, for those of you who are just tuning in now, I am recording right now, but I will stop recording when we get to more of the discussion, so you can feel a little less encumbered. But we will record this first part and publish that on our website. So I want to move forward to our speakers, because that's really why we are here, to hear from them and then to have a discussion. So today we are going to hear from two movers and shakers at two AmLaw 100 law firms. We're going to follow each of their presentation by a Q&A. And then at the end, we will have more of a general discussion where we're hoping you'll all bring your own, ideas and experiences. So first, we have Siobhan Handley, who is Orrick's Chief Talent Officer. And Siobhan was a partner in the firm's product and liability litigation and mass tort defense before becoming the managing director of resources, where she spearheaded the development of the firm's innovative talent model that replaces the traditional associate lockstep advancement system with a merit-based advancement. And since then, she has moved into the role of Chief Talent Officer, where she's responsible for developing and executing talent and human resource strategies. And so some of you may have heard that in March of this year, Orrick rolled out a new policy that gained some national media attention called Unplugged Time, which credits 40 hours of bonus eligible billable time to do just that, unplug. And so Siobhan's going to discuss that policy, how it was conceived of, implemented, its potentially its impact, as well as other well-being initiatives. And I'm also going to, I want to introduce at the same time, I'm going to introduce our second speaker, and then I'm going to hand things over to Siobhan. Is their second speaker we're going to hear from is Lori Capello, who many of you here know, who is Mintz's first director of well-being. Lori previously served as the director of human resources, benefits, and payroll at Mintz. Lori is an experienced HR professional, having worked at another large firm in Boston before joining Mintz. As the director of well-being, Lori is leading the strategic development, direction, communication, and management of Mintz's well-being programs. She's also the co-chair of Mintz's well-being committee, where she oversees the firm's internal and external well-being initiatives. And with Lori's guidance, Mintz was actually one of the first firms to take the ABA well-being pledge. And then finally, Lori is also the vice president of the Mindfulness in Law Society, and also the co-chair of Mindfulness in Law Society New England chapter. And so Lori's going to talk about the genesis of her role, the transition, and the well-being efforts that are currently and have been undertaken at Mintz for quite some time under Lori's lead. So with that, I would like to turn things over to Siobhan to talk to us about this unplug policy and other efforts at Orrick.
Thank you, Heidi. It's so nice of you to invite me here to talk about our unplug policy and some of the other things that we're doing for wellness. Really excited to be in such great company with the other professionals who are on the phone, and I see a lot of them coming in through the chat. So Heidi, you and I spoke when we first decided to announce this policy a few months back, and where it came from is pretty obvious in some ways, right? I think we're all seeing that. And I do just want to pause and say that I have two of my colleagues who've also joined, Carolyn Bortner, who is our global director of performance for our non-partner attorneys, and Danielle Van Wert, who is our innovation talent manager. And I work really closely with both of them on the initiatives, and just want to give a shout out to them. So, we were observing, like many other law firms, just the level of, Philippa, do you mind muting? No worries. Now you're muted. Someone muted you. Okay. Okay. Um, we were seeing kind of this ongoing stress created by really all of the events of 2020. The pandemic layered upon some of the, additional really sort of cataclysmic events dealing with the response to the killing of George Floyd, and many other, incredibly challenging circumstances for our team. And we, over the summer, last summer, we decided to give people the ability to take a couple of days to really engage in self-care, primarily coming out of conversations we had with our Black Lawyers of Work organization, which goes by Blue, that were describing some of the feelings they were having at work, and their ability to focus on work, and frankly, their lack of ability to focus on work, as something that was likened to a death in the family, or something that we would really give our bereavement leave policy to. And so we tapped into that policy and just said to people, listen, if you need to take a couple of days to recharge and engage in some self-care just for yourself, you can do that. And under that policy, you can log billable hours, right, for attorneys. So we gave them billable time to take time off, essentially. And for our staff team members or our non-billing team members, we gave them the option of using that time, and it wouldn't count against vacation. So it was essentially additional vacation time that wouldn't count against their paid time off. The response to that was overwhelming. Incredibly emotional response around people just feeling like having the ability to take that time for themselves, to take some mental time to come back recharged and, able to perform at a higher level, and to do so without having to worry about the impact on their hours, without having to do it taking against, family vacation time. And it really planted a seed for us on how incredibly impactful that can be, and how just telling people to take time off and to take care of themselves and to engage in wellness activities really becomes sort of a different conversation when you actually say, and we are going to give you billable time for this. We are going to give you credit for this in a way that makes team members feel like this is actually as important as client billable work. The firm is sending a message that when I'm trying to prioritize, do I engage in self-care or do I bill a few more hours for my client, that you can, put those things on equal footing as appropriate, of course. I mean, our client needs, and I don't have to say this to lawyers, our client needs always come first. So we do this in balancing, but it's just in the overall big picture, we're saying when you're trying to make decisions or prioritize. So, for a while, we were really understanding that people have got to take some time away, and that it had become increasingly difficult, especially during the pandemic, for people to do that. The lack of boundaries, the lack of options to really go anywhere, right? People, couldn't travel. I think we're finally coming out of that. But the sense was, unless we really incentivize people, it's not going to happen. And we think that this comes from a place of it being the right thing to do, of course, but it also comes from a place of we have an extremely high performing culture, and we want our high performers to be able to sustain that performance. And unless they literally unplug, unless people get a chance to recharge, we cannot sustain the high performance. And so, when we put it in those terms, it helped us, one, it reflects the reality. And two, I think it really helped us get buy-in across the firm in understanding that at its core, this was about the superior client service. This was about doing what we do best. This was not about, as Mitch, our chair, likes to say, chocolates on your pillow or a massage, right? This goes way beyond that. This goes to mentally giving people the space for that time away that will help them to recharge. So that was the genesis of the policy. The policy is that we have an expectation that every org team member will unplug for at least one of their vacation weeks per year. So it's 1 week. Our vacation policy is obviously more generous than that, but we have an expectation that they will unplug for 1 week.
Yeah.
We will,
Get rid of all that. You can smile.
I'm just gonna pause while we move.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Okay. So the policy is 1 week, like I said, and after 2021, we are going to require that unplug time be used in a block, that we require people to use it for a week, because I think, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but the sense of trying to truly unplug for a day, it doesn't get the benefit that we really want, right? We really want people to use it in a block of time. And we also think, just from a firm, just in managing it, I think it's easier to know that you're going to have to completely cover somebody for 1 week. We did make an exception when we rolled this out for 2021, simply because of the conditions around the pandemic and people not still, immunocompromised folks, et cetera, not having childcare, not having kids in school. And we felt that for some, a shorter spurt of unplugging may be what is needed this year. And we're trying to really meet people where they are. But going forward, we are going to require that people use it in a block. The only other requirement around that is just that you coordinate 2 to 4 weeks in advance, that you have coverage. We're asking everyone to designate an unplug buddy who's actually, covering your work. And then there are a bunch of other sort of administrative, where we bill it, et cetera. But importantly, it is, a 40-hour block of time for those that bill time, and it's 40 hours for those who don't bill time too. But it doesn't, we don't give additional paid time off. So we're just saying to our staff team members, look, you can completely unplug, but it's not an extra week of vacation. We kept our vacation policy the way it was. So far, we've had about 70 people take advantage of it since March. It's about approaching 18% of our population. We're getting a lot more people now that, we're getting into the summer and travel is opening up. I think we're going to see a pretty significant uptick in it. Important to this, we've had senior leaders of the firm taking it and being really transparent about taking it, including in their external emails that are going to clients saying, I'm taking unplugged vacation. I'll be completely unplugged and unavailable. And we have been thrilled at the reaction that we've gotten from clients, really encouraging it, supporting it, saying they'd like to do it. And so I think there's been kind of a universally positive reaction to it. And it's been manageable. I mean, this idea that people would be dropping out and unplugging and we wouldn't be able to predict, and keep that seamless client service potentially, is just not an issue the way we're managing it. I think it's been really an unmitigated positive. And so maybe, Heidi, I can just pause there. Did you want to allow questions on this now? And then we can talk about a couple of other things. And I'm just going to lean over and close my office door. It's getting noisy in my home office here. But Heidi, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think that would be great to open it up for questions on this specific policy. Does anyone have questions for Siobhan on the policy?
Also looking in the chat.
I do.
Yeah, I see a couple. Yeah, Tracy and then Laura.
Thank you so much for being here, Siobhan. I'm interested in pushback. Have you received it? What does it look like so far? Are people delighted, or are people going, there's no way, even if it were good for me, I just can't, I won't? I'd love to hear what the early days look like.
And Tracy, would you mind just introducing yourself for the group?
Not at all. Hi there. I'm Tracy Galloway, Galloway Law and Consulting. I'm actually a sole practitioner at this point of time, self-employed, pandemic, all by myself here.
So it's going to be really hard for you to find a vacation buddy, Tracy. So
I have
the
a whole
book-
list of people here now. I'm going to call for advice. You're on my HR department now, but anyhow.
right. That's right. So there's been some pushback. I mean, I think what's really helped with that, Tracy, is having senior leaders, having board and management committee members, having Mick Zuckley, our chair, say, I'm doing it. You know, he did it for 4 days, not a week, but he did it for 4 days where he went to a remote location fly fishing. So he literally was off the grid. You know, you still have some who feel like I just can't possibly do this. But I think, and I'm sure you're all seeing this as well, many people feel fairly close to a breaking point. The cumulative effect of work, pandemic, you know, everything else that's happening. So I think people who may have been suspect about whether they needed it or not, there's a lot more consensus around I need it. I can feel myself not being who, you know, I want to be. And I've had, you know, really hard charging partners say, I get it now, and I get it for my team, because their teams are exhausted and they've sort of facilitated this, and their teams have come back, their team members have come back refreshed, renewed. But, you know, definitely still some people, we're never going to get 100%, but if I can get, you know, 70 or 80%, I'll take that. And those folks who are not engaging in self-care, there's some people, you know, you're all on the phone because you're interested in this. There are just some people you're not going to reach. And I just accept that, right? I let the unreachables go, but let me reach the most, and let me at least have them understand if they don't do it for themselves, they need to do it for their teams. And hopefully that will help. But there's definitely been pushback.
Laura, do you want to go next? Go ahead. Laura, and then did I see Mary? I think that was you, Mary. So Laura and Mary.
Sure. First of all, I am delighted to be here today. This is a fascinating topic, and Org, I commend you for putting in this policy. My name is Laura Keeler. I'm a law practice advisor at LCL Mass LOMAP. If any of you afterwards have questions on any LCL LOMAP services, please reach out. Always happy to help. Siobhan, my question was, you noted that everyone will have a buddy for when they're unplugged. I wondered if you had anything in the policy, written or unwritten, to make sure that the same people aren't always getting tapped to be the buddies. Like, I remember when I was working at certain firms, you'd have some associates who would be covering for just about everybody. And so they may not leave until 2 a.m. consistently when other people would be getting out at 7 p.m. I didn't know for the backup buddies how that was working out.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Laura. So we don't have a formal, certainly not written in the policy. We do have assignment coordinators in many of our practice groups who are kind of overseeing overall the flow of assignments, and I think are being tapped to sort of help with coverage when people are going to be out. You know, not to speak too much ahead of some of the newer recommendations we are going to implement as we move into our official launch of our hybrid workplace. But that is something that we are going to essentially require, that our practice groups all have an assignment coordinator, either a partner or a senior associate. Because I think, to your point, making sure you see how the work is flowing is really important. It's one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from our associates, is kind of that uneven workflow feeling, as you noted, Laura, really, inequitable, but it also just contributes to burnout, right? So I think we have to do that hand in glove, but I'm hoping that people will use judgment also about who they're tapping within the group, and make sure we're not overloading any single individual. It would be really counterproductive if, somebody needed an unplugged vacation because they've been a vacation buddy. So, yeah, it's a really good thought, and that's how we've been handling it so far.
All right, I see. Mary, do you want to go for it? And then Karen, I see your hand.
Hi, I'm Mary McGarren Novak. I'm a regional HR director at Nixon Peabody, and I'm so grateful for the openness and transparency with which we're having these conversations and taking time to, as I like to say, I think a lot of us are thinking sort of transform an industry here.
Yes.
So one baby step at a time. And so my question is, I believe I heard you correctly when you said sort of the next iteration of this after 2021 is to require a block leave, right? That everybody take 1 week
Yes.
in, and I'm curious, what's the enforcement mechanism, right? I mean, you can run reports and see, there's all sorts of things we can do with our HRIS technology, but I'm wondering how you enforce it, because I will tell you, in conversations that I've had with associates in particular, there is some resistance among some associates being told how, when, the manner in which they're taking vacation, if at all. So I'm just curious how you are requiring it.
Well, it's a really good question, Mary. So, I mean, the answer is we're not telling them how or when to take their vacation, but if they want billable time for it, they have to take it in a block. And the way we're going to monitor it is monitor the way the time, of course, Carolyn, who's on the phone, will just, wants to, she's shooting daggers in my direction, because it's not going to be easy, right? What we're going to have to do is, we're going to rely for the most part on good faith, but we do run reports and we see where someone has entered 7.1 hours of unplugged time. It's not going to be possible, right? There's going to have to be a minimal enter of 40 hours, right? And, I don't want to get crazy about this, right? Because there are client emergencies that come up, and we're in a client service business. So we can't say, okay, you have to jump on a conference call because an emergency came up and therefore you lose your billable time, right? But we have said, an hour or two, but if we suddenly start seeing someone's like, okay, that turned into a day, we're just not going to have that be the unplugged time. And, it comes from a place, it may feel big brothery, it may feel, sort of patronizing in some way, but it's really just, look, we're trying to incentivize you to take care of yourself. And this comes from a place of trying to incentivize you to do that. You can do what you need to do. And if a client emergency comes up, we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis. But the idea is book a vacation, get your work covered, and do your very best to unplug. And I think that's the best we can do. But, we've got to be realistic. And again, we don't want, our clients there cannot be any interruption in client service. So if we need to make an exception here or there, but we really are going to try to enforce it.
Thank you.
All right.
Karen.
So yeah, Karen and then Philippa.
Thank you, Heidi. And thank you so much, Siobhan and Carolyn. I'm super excited to hear more about this initiative, and it sounds amazing. And I hope more and more people take advantage of it. And so my question goes a little bit to that. You said this applies to the whole population. You mentioned people who, timekeepers and non-timekeepers. So the entire firm. How are you tracking utilization? So do you have a sense of the 18% who have taken advantage of it? How many are attorneys, associates, partners, and how many are staff? I'd be super curious to hear a little bit about that, because right now with our associate population so busy, I'm curious if they found time to even find a buddy to cover for them, because it's impossible to find the time or to find someone else who might have that coverage time.
Yes, so we are tracking it. I think right now it's pretty even in the 70 people. Remember, that's only 15% of our population, right? It's pretty even between partners and then through all levels of associate. We do not have that information yet for our non-billable, or not folks that don't bill time, because of course they don't have to code their time. So what we've done is actually, we just went out with a survey to our team saying, hey, reminder, have you unplugged? And if so, can you let us know how much, when, right? And that's how it's almost like self-reporting. But again, Karen, it's a pretty small percentage so far. I'm hoping as we go into the summer months and travel is opened a little bit, I think people who wanted to truly unplug, I don't know about all of you, but I tried a couple times to unplug while I was still home with my kids. And I'm like, what is the point of this? I'm not working, but I'm ready to pull my hair out with Legos. So I wanted to wait until we could go somewhere, right? Really. So my sense is as travel is opening up, we're going to see many more. I know this already. People have talked about booking it, booking vacations to, places within the US and even outside at this point. So, but I think it was really important to us, Karen, just to underline this point. And I know you are the same philosophy. It was really important that it was the whole team. it was really important to recognize that our staff team members are just as in need of self-care and unplugging as our lawyers. It's kind of core to who we are. And honestly, it makes it a little more difficult to manage, right? Because you get busy partners who's marketing director. I get an email like they're on their unplugged. And I'm like, okay, so who's covering? Well, this person's covering. Okay, so call that person. Okay, but they're supposed to be available, when I need them. It's like, yeah, except when they're unplugging, because if you want them here. So, that was an important part of all this. And I think, it is a little harder to monitor compliance, but my sense is there was a real appetite for it. And so we're getting a lot of support. And we've got a really strong executive staff team that's kind of overseeing most of our staff teams, and they're helping with facilitate as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Philippa, you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry that it wasn't muted before. I came in from leading a meditation, and so I was still open.
You were in the zone. I love it. That's great.
Yeah, sorry. That was a really great presentation, Siobhan. What I'm just going to ask you for is a little bit more context into how this unplugged thing fits into your normal vacation policy.
Yeah.
And like sort of what the expectations are on associates, partner, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have an unlimited vacation policy. But typically people take between 3 and 4 weeks a year. So this was not meant to, Philippa, layer on another, right? I mean, when you have that unlimited for lawyers, and when you have an unlimited, it is what it is, but obviously we all know what unlimited vacation means. We're trusting people to use their judgment. And again, it's usually 3 to 4 weeks. So one of those weeks should be an unplugged week, but we're not encouraging people to necessarily now take 6 weeks of vacation. Although look, if you have a year where you can fit that in and you're still doing what you need to do, that's what unlimited vacation means, but it's not typical. So that's how it works. For staff, we have kind of a PTO system. I'm sure many of you have that as well, right? So people earn time off for as they work. This is not additional time. It's just the ability, whatever you have, you take some of that earned time and you use it to truly unplug and not have to be logging on for any period. And people may say, well, why does staff need that? But because they can unplug much more easily than lawyers. I think it's a pretty overly simplistic view of what staff is doing now, right? Staff is, and that's why I think it was important to us. I don't know anybody on the org team who is not accountable, nights, weekends at this point, right? I mean, there may be different ways we compensate people for that, overtime or whatever, but there's still an accountability that's expected there. And this unplugged would eliminate that for any reason. And then of course we've got higher level of staff that are operating, they're client facing, et cetera. And so this is helpful for them as well. But it's not additional vacation, it's the way you use vacation. Does that help?
It totally helps because
Great.
I understand exactly why something like this is needed for both the person taking the time and the firm, because I don't think I've ever not been disturbed when I've been on a vacation,
Right.
whether in academia or in the private sector,
Yes. Yes, totally.
So Siobhan, do you want to continue to talk about some of the other initiatives quickly, and then we'll move to Lori?
We can go to Lori. I mean, I guess I will just quickly mention maybe a couple of other things that we've done. I mean, one thing that I would love for, more people in the industry to be doing, and it's why we're here sharing, is we did during the pandemic give lawyers who could not have help brought into their homes for anyone they were giving care to. So we did have some people who were giving, obviously, children, and we did have some people who were taking care of older family members and could not bring in help because of particular health risks. They were susceptible to complications arising from COVID, and we used the CDC definition, which is a pretty long list of underlying conditions. We allowed them to reduce their FTE to 80%, but we paid them at 100%. And again, that was another thing that got a lot of positive reaction from those folks who really needed it. And it wasn't a huge number of people, but it was a rotating list. And for those people, it was incredibly meaningful and impactful. And it got me thinking about, are there other circumstances where we should be thinking about that kind of an accommodation, and allowing those people, allowing the folks who needed it to have the ability to give care without worrying about their hours and their compensation. So I think that that's something that's been really helpful. And then, our overall approach on wellness has really become focused on recognizing those periods of intensity. So we have something called wellness dollars, where we give out gift cards after people have had particularly intense periods. And that we built on some of the success we've had in, end of year recognition of folks who had overall total hours that are very high. But, there are definitely people along the way who have months of really high periods of activity. And then at the end of the year end up at what looks like a manageable number, but, 3 to 4 of those months felt really unmanageable. I think our overall approach now is just that wellness and mental well-being is, I think, an existential threat to our profession. And unless we can figure out a way to get better at this, we're going to continue to, have people certainly leave law firm life or step away from the profession, and, in some circumstances, maybe worse. But, we just have not overall as a profession, just have not been great in recognizing the role of self-care in performance. Somehow we think it's soft. We think it's coddling. We think it's for the weak, as opposed to, if you were a professional athlete, you would never train 24/7, 12 months a year. And I think that's the message that we're trying to get across. Nobody's getting soft. There's not any dip in quality or what our expectations are, but there is an understanding that people need support, and it looks differently at different times.
Well, thank you so much, Siobhan, for joining us here today and for talking about what you are doing, what your firm's doing. And I think I'm hoping that we'll continue to have more of a conversation about this as well after we hear from Lori. So I'm happy to continue that conversation. So Lori, I'm going to hand things over to you to talk about what you are doing over at Mintz and your new role.
Great, thank you, Heidi. And Siobhan, I commend you and your firm for being really a leader. You really are, when you give credit and billable hours for well-being, I think that's almost unheard of right now, but hopefully, that will be the future, right? Maybe you'll inspire many other firms to go in that direction, because that's what it really takes, I think, to show that you're that supportive. So we are not there yet, but we do have a wonderful well-being program at Mintz. And thank you, Heidi, for allowing me to come and share today. And I want to, say to all of you that I am very passionate about well-being. I've been on this path for a long time, and I'm very happy to be a resource if I can help in any way. And even though Mintz is a very large firm, we still have a budget related to well-being, and I take advantage of as many free resources and partner with all the vendors that I possibly can to make the program as robust. So for those that are really small firms or have really small budgets or don't even have anybody dedicated, to well-being, but are obviously concerned about it, just want to keep some of those things in mind. And I'd like to give a little bit of a overview of our program. And I do welcome you to please ask questions. I was so thrilled that Siobhan had so many questions. I mean, that just makes the presentations, so much more live and vibrant. So as I'm going through some of my pieces, and I'm going to share the intranet that we have with our wellbeing program, please do feel free to ask questions. And then I'll talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of my transition from the director of HR responsible for benefits and HRIS payroll to hopefully very soon, just completely well-being. Even though I have the official title, I'm still straddling both roles until we find somebody to take that leadership role, but very much looking forward to it. So I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, and Heidi, can you give me the thumbs up if you can see it? Excellent, thank you. So those of you that have heard me speak before, I'm low tech Laurie. I love technology, but it doesn't always love me. So when a screen share works, it's a good day. So Empower is the name of the Mint's Wellbeing Program. And I love our tagline, empowering your health, your well-being, and your life. And we've actually had the Empower program at Mint since 2006. So we're in our 15th year. Now, it started out very lightly. It was just, discounts on gym memberships and walking maps for all our locations to encourage people to be active during the day. And over time, we have built on the program. And that's one of the other things for those of you that have a fairly new program or don't have an official program yet. You don't have to start out with everything. Choose one or two things that are most important to you. Build those out, as quality, try to get them ingrained as part of the culture. And then over time, you can add to it. So I'm going to just highlight on a couple of our programs today. I'm on the home page, and that talks about the American Bar Association Wellbeing Pledge. And as Heidi mentioned, we were one of the early adopters of the pledge. And I just think that having that opportunity and having the support of the ABA, and now the wonderful support of Heidi's group and the Institute for Wellbeing and Law, gives us so much more credibility when it comes to talking about well-being, gives us the data to support the benefits, not only to the individual, but to firms, to clients, to the whole industry. And it all started for me with that report that they did back in 2016, really identifying and highlighting the real dire straits, I think, that the industry was in, and then following up with the toolkit and providing some real tangible steps that we all could take no matter where we are in the legal profession. And so we've tried to build on that, but we do want to make it known that the firm takes it serious. So we have this on our homepage on the Empower site. We also have it as part of our recruiting efforts, so people know that we take well-being seriously at Mint's. And then just to highlight a couple of the programs, as I mentioned, we started off with the physical fitness and the physical well-being. And then as part of the ABA pledge, that's when we added our mental health resources page. And, really trying to reinforce taking the stigma away. When I speak, a lot of times I go to section meetings talking about our well-being program because everybody's so busy, even though they hear about it as part of onboarding, and we do all kinds of programs throughout the year. If they don't have the time to pay attention at that time, they have no idea it even exists. So I've now started going to section meetings, and just 10 or 15 minutes is all I ask, just to share while I have that captive audience and have the support of the section leaders saying, pay attention to this, know where these resources are. And because I'm a visual person, I do generally scan through the website so people know where they can go at any time to find some additional information, whatever's interesting them. So again, we talked about the whole ABA pledge. We have the links to our employee assistance program. We have some screening and awareness tools. We have links to all of the state lawyer assistance programs for the offices where Mint's has location. We have additional resources, including a link to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And, Blue Cross Blue Shield has a wonderful opioid resource center. I mean, it's unfortunate that such a thing has to exist, but it can be very helpful for families that are going through that type of a crisis. And you can see some other postings here, like various presentations that we've had. If people want to go back, if they weren't able to attend, they can go to this page and, take a look at that. And we do try to post new content, keep it fresh and relevant. The other program that I like to highlight is our mindfulness program. And I love our logo. I mean, we talk about balance all the time. Is it really possible? You know, sometimes we're like this, sometimes we're like that. But as we know, the scales of justice are the symbol, right, for legal justice. And we have balancing over the top, the chimes that are often used to signal the beginning and the end of a mindfulness session. We've had 5 years now where we've had an 8-week mindfulness at work program that has been open to everyone. We have several hundred MINTS employees that have gone through the training. And so on this page, we do post links to the curriculum from the 8-week program. We also post links to mindfulness meditation live opportunities. Heidi mentioned that I'm the vice president of the Mindfulness and Law Society. I'm going to show you their website a little bit later too, because I'm always trying to recruit new members. But whether or not you're a member, you are welcome to join every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern and every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. We have one of our teachers and board members from the Mindfulness and Law Society who lead live meditation, and there's sometimes some sharing that goes on. And again, you do not have to be a member. We welcome everyone. We have local chapters. New England was the first, and we're very robust. I see several of our members are on this program today, and it's nice to see. But you know, mindfulness can really be a very effective tool to help deal when we have those challenging times. It's not only about work, it's about your life as well, your relationships. I found, you know, personally, when I took the training, that, you know, my life really changed, and that's what got me on the path to wanting to be an MBSR, which is a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. So I'm about midway through level 1. There's 3 levels. If I get to finish level 1, I will be happy with myself. But anyway, the practice, and it doesn't have to be 20, 30 minutes a day. It could be a couple of small breaks throughout the day where you really just pause, center yourself, and take a breath. And that can have a big impact on how the rest of your day goes. Of course, if you can fit that morning practice in 15 to 20 minutes, it really sets the tone for the day. And I highly encourage that. But if anybody's interested, maybe Heidi can put in the chat a link to the Mindfulness and Law Society. Take a look at that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if you do join the Mindfulness and Law Society, you will automatically be affiliated with the New England chapter. And we do meet generally monthly. Sometimes we have big programs that we offer, and it's not always just about mindfulness, but it expands into well-being as well. And some months we just gather to practice and to just, you know, share what's going on. So again, always welcome new members. So finishing up with the mindfulness page, we also have links to other apps and resources and videos and recordings so that MINTS employees at any time, if they wanted to take a break and needed a recording, they could just go right to this site and have a meditation. And we also offer each Wednesday at 11 Eastern and 2 Eastern live mindfulness, MINTS mindfulness practices. And most weeks I lead those practices. And it's just wonderful to get to practice, you know, in community with each other. The next piece I'll just like to highlight is our newest edition, which is inclusion. And we partnered with our new director of DE&I, Nargis Kakalia, to make sure that the content on this page is relevant. I am not a DE&I expert, but I know how important it is. You cannot be well if you don't feel included, right? So there's so much to that, and there's such a wonderful intersection. And Nargis and I are partnering on many different levels, but this is just something where employees can go to see as part of well-being. We have, you know, we have information on here, a message that our managing partner sent out about Pride Month. We also have information about the rise in anti-Semitism, and adding the gender pronoun options to your tagline, which is something I still need to do. Again, low-tech Laura, you have to forgive me for that. The other thing I'd like to highlight is the Mindfulness in Law Society is partnering with the National Black Law Student Association, and we've had conversations most months, and we do post the recordings here, but some really interesting dialogue has come out of that. We will be having hopefully a conversation in June that we'll be announcing soon, but those recordings are also posted on the Mindfulness in Law Society website if anybody's interested in seeing some of those discussions. So again, just ways to highlight. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. The different components. We also have a financial well-being component, and try to make the program itself comprehensive so that it's really addressing whatever could be causing an employee concern, challenge, or stress. So with that in mind, again, as I mentioned, it started in 2006. I've been part of it since the beginning, and it has, continued to evolve and gain the support of employees and leaders at all levels. And that's another piece that's so important, is having leaders, as Siobhan had mentioned, having leaders support, being transparent, sharing that they've been part of the mindfulness program, and encouraging, young associates to give it a shot, see if it can help you. And that, I think, is a real key component of a successful, if you will, well-being program. As far as my transition, recognizing probably in around 2019 that I was really much more passionate now about well-being than all other things benefits. I've had a very long career in benefits. It's been wonderful, but thought, now it's time to transition. And with, again, all the focus on well-being, I thought it was a good time. Had the first conversation with my boss in February of 2020, just prior to the pandemic, with my request to consider letting me transition. And, I think that with all of the challenges of the pandemic, it's also an opportunity to highlight the importance of well-being, the effects of, being stressed and burnt out and dealing with challenges and trying to, meet client needs and support the, the firm. And that has gotten the attention of people. So finding the silver lining, I guess, with that is what allowed my position to be approved. And I'm very much looking forward to fully focusing on the well-being component. And again, happy to be a resource to anybody that would like to reach out. So I've been doing a lot of talking. I'm going to pause here and open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Lori. I see that we have a question from Bernardo.
Sure. Hi, Bernardo.
Hi, Lori. Hi, everybody. Bernardo Quadra. I'm an assistant attorney general at the Mass AG's office and a member of our well-being committee at the AGO. Always happy to be part of this meeting. And Lori and Siobhan, thanks for your presentations. Lori, I guess I had two questions, and you sort of started answering the first one, but in particular, or specific to the mindfulness practices, I'm curious if you have any tips on engaging the skeptics and engaging folks that that just might not recognize the benefits. I mean, like Siobhan said, you're never going to get 100%, but and you touched on the power of having leadership and senior folks talk and demonstrate. I'm wondering, because it sounded like, and I think you said there were maybe several hundred that have gone through the MBSR course, which is amazing. Just wondering how that reach out went, and again, just generally what tips you might have.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Engagement with anything other than billable time is always a challenge, right? The 8-week program we have is a modified MBSR. It's a corporate program, so it's just 1 hour a week. We do it at lunchtime Eastern, which helps. And generally, we just provide a little healthy snack and a beverage because we want people focused on the program. But from the very start, having the key leaders like section managers piggyback on my invitation, encouraging people to participate was really, I think, the biggest driver to getting people to show up. And then it grew organically after that. I didn't even have to ask anymore. The following year, when I sent out the invitation, and we always do an intro program in December, and then the 8-week program starts in January. When I sent out the invitation to the intro program, we had people who had gone through the program and they piggybacked on it, whether it was to the entire firm or just to their section. And that truly does have a very big impact. The other thing I will mention is that we are very fortunate to have Brenda Fingold as the leader of our corporate program. So I didn't know Brenda before she came in to teach the first program at Mintz. We have now become friends. She's my co-chair with the New England chapter of the Mindfulness and Law Society. But for those of you who don't know Brenda, she was a partner back in the day at Hale and Dorr, and a very high level partner. And then she ended up getting ill and then focusing on her own well-being, and then decided to become an MBSR instructor. And I think that lends a lot of credibility because, you know, lawyers are skeptical, right? But if they know that this person that's leading this program has walked in their shoes and has shared many of the same, you know, situations that they have, that lends a lot of credibility, you know, to the program. So we've been very, very fortunate, and we already have her lined up to teach our 8-week program starting in January 22. And next week, I'm actually leading an intro for our summer associates because we want to engage early on. And from what I understand, I did do it last year. It was well received, which is why they invited me back for this year's class. And I understand they're very much looking forward to it. So I hope that answered your question, Bernardo.
It does, Lori. Thanks so much. And the other quick question I had, I noticed, and you referenced the fact that you guys give creditable time for diversity efforts. I was wondering if you could share any more specific information on that, maybe if there's a certain amount of time. And I just want to also mention, as it relates to this, that I did see, I love seeing this. Anytime firms are giving billable credit for diversity efforts, I'm always trying, sort of beating that drum. Foley Hoag, I saw a few weeks ago, announced that they were going to be giving, I think, unlimited billable hour credit for diversity efforts. I think they said unlimited. But not to put you on the spot, Lori, but curious if you can share any of what Mintz is doing on that.
Yes, and I apologize, I don't know the amount of hours. There is a certain amount of hours, and I actually tried to use that to say, can we expand that to well-being and, incorporate that? So I haven't, I've had one conversation, and I plan to have more because I do think it's so important. Again, going back to the billable hour credit really shows that you are supporting something. And so, yes, I am. Mintz does have credible hours for, for diversity efforts, but I don't know I want to say maybe, I won't even say it because I'll be wrong, but there is a certain number though. Yes.
Thanks, Lori.
You're very welcome.
I see Kathy. Hi, Kathy, with your hand up.
Hey, Heidi, thank you so much for organizing again and bringing us all together. Thanks to the speakers. This is really interesting. I'm a professor of law at Boston University School of Law and on the Wellbeing Committee there. We met yesterday for the first time since COVID hit. And it's great to be back in action. And one thing we talked about yesterday was, the school is doing a fantastic job at offering lots of opportunities for students to connect with well-being techniques. So we offer meditation and yoga and, all sorts of different programs. Our biggest challenge is getting the students to take up the programs, to come and join us, to see the benefits in taking the time out of their extremely busy, high stress schedules to come and do some of this stuff. And I'm just wondering, we talked a little bit before with the first presentation about enticing employees, the lawyers, to come and take advantage of these programs that are offered. just wondering if you have any insights, or really anyone on the call. I'd love to hear ideas about how we can do this. It's one thing to incentivize. It's another thing to think about how busy the schedules are and how we can make room for the students and for the practicing lawyers to actually have some breathing room to do some of this work for themselves. Thank you.
So I'll just answer briefly and then turn it to everybody else that may have some sharing. But, the engagement and getting people to take time is always the biggest challenge. Again, we find that those personal testimonies, hearing something from me is not that I'm not credible, I am, but when a colleague shares their personal experience, that has been what has been successful. I mean, we had one time where the director of our library services, she was in our first group, and she went back and talked about it to her team. Well, the next 8-week program, I think we had 50% of her team at that 8-week program, and they consistently came to our weekly gatherings. Now we've had some attrition, so most of those people are gone, but so it's really those personal sort of testimonies and encouragements that get people to do it. And the other thing I will say is that, sometimes I'll lead a session for Mints and I may only have 2 people, in that particular session, but I always feel if I'm helping one person a day, then that's a good day, right? That person who needed to be there that day. So don't get discouraged if the numbers are small. The very next week, I might have 10 or 12 people, and the people come in and out. But when I speak with them, they'll always say, knowing that we have this is so important. Knowing that this is an opportunity, we so appreciate. So I think it's important, not to get discouraged with the small numbers sometimes.
So
I think that was a great, Mary, before you go, no, please. I think that was a great way to sort of start a larger discussion too. And so, Kathy, I think, and Mary, I know you're going to respond, but if other people have responses and would like to chime in with ideas, that would be great. And if anyone then also has anything to share or any questions, that would also be wonderful. So we'll move into that section of the program. So Mary, please go for it. Now you're muted. Sorry, I threw you off.
I don't want to monopolize the chat, but I just wanted to piggyback on what Lori said. Time and attracting people, whether it's to really compelling programs or an 8-week session on mindfulness. I mean, I think one of the things that we're learning at Nixon Peabody, and our initiative, by the way, is called the RISE Initiative. And it's resilient, intentional, supported, empowered. One of the things that I've realized as a member of the firm-wide and the local New England team is that you can't always measure your success by the numbers attending. And I think that that's a very important thing to be mindful about as you're starting or as you're offering. I don't think that's a metric that's terribly meaningful. But with that said, time is the enemy here. And I think I wanted to just pick up on what Lori said about storytelling. One of the things that we've done as a firm is we've created these story casts that we have posted to our internal site. And it's all about people sharing their story. One who's battling cancer, and she talked about resilience. One who, and they're very personal. They're very inspiring, and they are really, I think, advancing the conversation around, taking time for yourself, being well, being resilient. And, we've had vacation campaigns around taking your time and along the lines of what Siobhan was saying earlier. So I think it's been a multimodal attack, if you will, and that the messaging on demand, we've had a ton of hits, just a ton of hits of people listening like a podcast, or we've called them story casts, that really inspire, I think, motivate and engage and get people calling us to act, whether it's to access benefits or to take a leave or just change something, right? Some sort of self-care. So I'm a big proponent of that storytelling, and it's something that we found to be powerful.
Thank you, Mary. Philippa, I see your hand up.
Okay, hi Kathy. That was great, Mary. And I agree with you and with Laurie that sometimes having even a small handful of people is enough, and you can't just go by numbers. However, that being said, I do feel that I noticed here at BC a huge jump when we offered a course for credit, you know, on mindfulness and contemplative practices. I think that it's kind of like giving people billable hours for certain work in certain areas when they're in practice. I think kids, I think law students realize, you know, they want to do things for credit, and they can find the time. And even then, you know, sometimes they don't do all the reading for it because it's a different kind of reading. I had my first syllabus, I had all law review articles and took them out and put in chapters, you know, from books that I thought it would be good for them to read on their own at some point. And still, if they did all the reading that I assigned, it would be a heavy course. But then sometimes in evaluations, they'll say, oh, you know, the reading isn't as heavy because, you know, do they actually do it? But you know, it's a what they call a variable credit course. It's 2 credits, and then if the students do a paper, then they can earn an extra credit to make it 3. We kind of compromise that in the school. But I just think also doing little sort of mini retreats, like a half-day retreat sometimes, is also helpful. And just now we were taking applications for our Dublin program, and one woman heard that I might be the faculty member leading them in Dublin in a year. And somebody said, oh, I came to your half-day retreat, and it, you know, it inspired me so much. And, you know, just hearing that kind of thing from a 3L who I haven't seen in the interim 2 years, you know, it's amazing. It goes back to what Laurie and Kathy, not Kathy, I'm sorry, I'm terrible on names, but the woman from Nixon Peabody, you know, it's that kind of thing that you don't know whom you're actually having an effect on.
Yeah. Thank you, Philippa. Any other comments on what Laurie has shared or what Kathy has shared, or anything else on people's mind? You know, as we've said, this is sort of a space to share ideas and resources. And so I just want to open things up for anyone to jump in here.